For instance, forensic accounting, and then you come from psychology, right? So I would have to learn or I would go through what accounting is. So I started on my own. It was just a laptop in Starbucks, right? That was my first starting point.
A lot of companies started in that way.
So today, for students who want to move into this, you must understand that it's not just one field that you need to be focused on. Of course, you need to understand the whole area, right? When we usually say fraud, we look into, like I said, corruption. We look into misappropriation of company assets. Also, at times, financial statement fraud, right? Because, again, as stakeholders of different companies, what we rely on is financial statements, the annual reports and whatnot. And most of the time, you get defrauded by third parties, falsified accounts and whatnot. Critical thinking and skepticism, that's for sure, right? You need to have critical thinking, and you need to be skeptical about everything you see. You need to go behind the numbers. This is always things that I tell my people as well. Social intelligence is going to be something very, very important going forward. That's for sure. Strategic communication, I think I brought that up earlier as well, and how we're going to bring people together and communicate your message right. Mental agility. I mean, you got to continuously learn.
That's the critical thinking skills you were talking about earlier.
Critical thinking skills, and you got to continuously learn. It's never going to stop, right? Environmental.
Welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Help University podcast, Let's Talk, where we have interviews with distinguished alumni from Help University that are making waves in society. And this afternoon, we've got such a privilege to speak with Raymon Ram, who is the current president for Transparency International Malaysia, and one of the leading lights that is leading the way to a more transparent and corruption-free Malaysia. Raymon was a graduate of our Bachelor of Psychology program here in Help University, and he went on to complete a Master's in Economic Crime here in Help University, and is currently pursuing his DBA, So his whole academic journey at the tertiary level, we are proud to say, has been with Help University. But we are so grateful, Raymon, to have you here with us. Thank you for taking time to be with us.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's just surreal to have an interview with the person that actually welcomed us to the first day of orientation during the bachelor's degree program that we had.
I'm glad you remember that, Raymon, right? That must have quite a while back, right? But Raymon, look, as I've mentioned in the introduction, I mean, the work that you're doing is really so important in Transparency International Malaysia. As you know, this is an issue of urgency as well as importance as we grow our nation, to make our nation more corruption-free, a more transparent society. Maybe you can start by sharing, after you completed your degree in psychology, and there were so many different options in terms of a career path, why did you decide to go into the field of economic crime?
Thank you for that. I mean, first thing is this, I mean, when I went into psychology, I mean, the interest that I actually had was to understand human behavior, to understand how people think, and also to understand why some people act deviantly from others, right? And the whole purpose was, when I went through the program, I was looking to do a master's later on in forensic psychology, actually.
Interesting.
Right? So, but I couldn't find the right school and whatnot. But again, when I did the psychology program, I went through a number of different segments within the field, and what I understood was I had different focus areas and areas of interest that I could pursue, and one of which was, of course, in criminology and such. So when we look at criminology, forensic psychology, I think the closest for me to do after the degree program was the Masters in Economic Crime Management by Help University itself. One thing I realized is this, even before joining the master's program, is that when we look at the field of criminology itself, a lot of research and a lot of focus has been on blue-collar crime, right, on the types of physical criminal behavior, not on white-collar criminality, right? So I believe that I could look into these areas, and there is a gap that needs to be fulfilled, right? So that's why I pursued the area of white-collar crime and financial crime prevention as a whole,
So maybe looking back at your time when you were studying the Masters of Economic Crime and Help, and thinking and reflecting on what you're doing now in fighting to make Malaysia more corruption-free and reducing economic crime, what were a few things that you learned in that Master's program that you felt has been really valuable in the work that you're doing right now?
I mean, to be honest, this was a master's program where we had practitioners as lecturers, right? So when you have practitioners as lecturers, yes, we do need the theoretical background, but you also need to know what the issues are are the type of issues that you will face when you go out to the working world. So we had that opportunity because these were practitioners that were there. There were some challenges. Why I say challenges is because the Masters of Economic Crime Management would introduce different areas of economic crime. For instance, forensic accounting, and then you come from psychology, right? So I would have to learn or I would go through what accounting is, how to read financial statements, how to go through these numbers and whatnot. But did it on my own and had the assistance from the lecturers at that time and managed through. But then again, it opened doors and understanding of different segments, right? Like I said, and also anti-money laundering and whatnot. These are very new areas, niche areas that are not being discussed about. So I believe the Masters of Economic Crime Management really opened up my view on how economic crime is perceived, how financial crime prevention is done, and how the different facets sometimes comes together. Yeah.
And so, thinking back, to I believe it's about a 2-year program, and I'm sure very eye-opening for a psychology graduate to be conscientized to the world of economic crime. Can you think back to maybe 1 or 2 modules that you felt were your favorite and in many ways then shaped your career decisions after you graduated from that master's?
I would say forensic accounting, I mentioned just now. And also anti-money laundering that we had, right? So forensic accounting is something quite interesting because, again, to date, I'm doing the job. So when we talk about forensic accounting, it's not only about accounting because you talk about different facets that comes into play. Digital forensics or even data analytics and whatnot, it all comes to play together. So that makes it interesting. Or even anti-money laundering, the way it's evolving today, the types of compliance requirements that we have and whatnot, it's very interesting. It's not something stagnant that you do routine day to day. So I think these were 2 subjects that were quite something that I could remember until now is because it really impacted me on how it evolves and how different things can be. Yeah.
I think the point that you made earlier about the fact that when we talk about forensics or criminology, oftentimes we do focus on whether it's murder or that kind of crime. But the point you made is an important one, which is in the context of nation development, in the context of creating a better, brighter future for Malaysia. This issue of corruption and economic crime is such a big issue. So I want to say that on behalf of Help University, we're really proud, Raymond, of the work you've done, and such important work in helping the public, but also working with the private and the government sector to address this issue, which was of huge public relevance. Now, one of the things you did after graduating was begin your own company. It's called Graymatter Forensic Advisory. Could you tell us a little bit about the journey of becoming an entrepreneur, starting your own business? And tell us a bit more about what Graymatter does.
To be honest, it all started during my master's program because we had a colleague, and that colleague ended up becoming my first boss. And of course, I joined the company and then worked for some time. And then again, after some time, I realized that my passion lied in economic crime management, right, or financial crime management. So again, looking at the concept of ikigai, for example, right, you look at passion, you look at market demand, you look at capability, right? So I found that intersection to be quite interesting because there is a market demand, there is changes in legislation that is coming. The corporate sector would require assistance in understanding how to defend themselves against financial crime, and then I know I can build that capability and competency, and I had a passion in it. So that was my trigger point of why I should start my own. So I started on my own. It was just a laptop in Starbucks, right? That was my first starting point.
A lot of companies started in that way, yeah?
So to date, we have a team. Today, we have an office. We work with the private sector, government-linked companies, GLICs, and whatever not. We focus on investigations, ad hoc investigations. We also do a lot of risk management work. So it's fraud risk management, corruption risk management, and also AML, CFT compliance, right? So we are growing in that sense. And there is a demand because to date, you would see a shift in global legislation globally right, which are looking into preventing financial crime. So that's something that triggered the whole thing, and today we are slowly developing as we can.
Maybe to just dive a bit deeper for some of our current Help University students who are watching this podcast, and some of them, whether they are from accounting background, finance background, maybe in a psychology background or law background, if they are considering this area of economic crime,
yes,
could you maybe give us maybe some examples of the kinds of cases, kinds of challenges, kinds of issues that you're helping companies deal with? So at least, to them, they can visualize the kind of work that you do if you went into this area.
To be honest, it's changing the company's mindset from being reactive to proactive, right? Because when I first started, most of the time when we get called in, not even for consultancy work, for advisory, it was for training purposes, right? When we get called in for training purposes, the first question I would ask is, what happened? Because it's always when something goes wrong, when there is a fraud, and a senior level management fraud or something that's taken place, a cyber attack that's taken place, only then we get called in. Okay. But to date, we are looking at risk management, right? A lot of times companies are bringing us in to look at what are the risk exposure to those organizations, sure, and how can we put in controls to prevent those risks that they have. So I think for students who want to move into this, you must understand that it's not just one field that you need to be focused on. Of course, you need to understand the whole area, right? When we talk about if you're from legal or you're from accounting or you're from IT, it's mix and match altogether, right? And you got to know how to get them to talk to each other and put all three different fields into one in order to resolve cases and also to prevent future occurrences of fraud in different organizations.
And when you're talking about fraud, again, for the benefit of our public listeners, you're talking about things like where maybe a staff is involved in corrupt practices, there are leakages, they have stolen money from the company. I mean, are these the kind of cases that
when we usually say fraud, we look into, like I said, corruption, we look into misappropriation of company assets, also at times financial statement fraud, right? Because again, as stakeholders of different companies, what we rely on is financial statements, the annual reports and whatnot. And most of the time you get defrauded by third parties, falsified accounts and whatnot. So these are different facets that we come in, and the different types of preventive measures to put in place to ensure that companies can protect themselves from this happening. Because when this happens, you have reputational damage, you have legal repercussions, you have financial loss, right? So we got to manage that.
And so for students who are thinking about going into this area, Raymond, I mean, what is the advice you have for them? And, for example, what kind of qualities should these graduates have in order to be effective in this particular field and discipline?
Critical thinking and skepticism. That's for sure, right? You need to have critical thinking, and you need to be skeptical about everything you see. You need to go behind the numbers. This is always the thing that I tell my people as well. Yeah. There's no way you can believe the numbers. You got to do site visits. You got to find out what's going on, understand the background of these transactions and such. Go behind the numbers. That's number one. So you got to have critical thinking.
So Sherlock Holmes kind of stuff, like you are actually solving a crime, right?
You got to think like a criminal. I think that's the main thing here, right? How things can be manipulated, right? So end of the day, I think that is one. And then we also got to look at how you can bring people together. I think that's important because for example, in a certain case that we work with, it's never just forensic accountants. You will need digital forensic expertise to come in to retrieve that evidence.
So the IT people as well?
Yeah, IT people that comes in. Then you also have data analysts or data scientists that comes in to analyze this information, and all three of these individuals or these three parties will talk different languages, right? And the expectations of each person or each person's need to be understood as well. And you got to put them together. I think that's the biggest challenge, or that's something that you need to work with. So if you're able to critically think, solve problems, and also bring people together, I think that those will be very important values to have.
Now, going back to when you were studying psychology, because I find it very interesting that with your first degree in psychology, you've ended up in this particular line. So if you think back to your psychology studies, what is one or two valuable things you learned within the field of psychology that makes you effective in this area of fraud management and investigating these kind of cases?
It's understanding people. Okay, that's one. But we usually fall back to what we call the fraud triangle when we talk about fraud, right? Okay. And fraud triangle talks about having opportunity, pressure, and rationalization. When these three elements are present, you have people commit fraud. Now, what I have seen so far is that the rationalization part is the most significant, right? How do people justify their actions? I think that's important. So when I went through the psychology program, and they were modules that actually taught us on how human behavior is such, and even abnormal psychology comes into play, and the others. And we understand that sometimes people tell themselves it's okay, right? Through various reasons. Let me give you an example. I've given so much for this company. I'm the first to clock in, last to clock out. So what if I take a bit, right?
So the company owes me.
The company owes me, right?
They're underpaying me, so if I steal a few hundred thousand, that's justified.
So justifiable. If I can give another example, because I met a real life fraudster, and this fraudster that I met, without mentioning the name, and it was interesting because we invited him for a conference. And he was a CFO of a previous company that went down in the US, right? And it was a very famous company, right? So when we invited him to speak, he did something very interesting that triggered my thought of psychology as well. He held up two things in his hand and he kept quiet. One was a trophy and the other was a card, right? Then he told the crowd, he said, look, I got both of these doing the same thing in the same year. Then he explained, the trophy was CFO of the year. The card was his prison card. Right? Then he said, I wouldn't have got both of this if I didn't do what I did. And you know how many people in corporate America is doing what I did, right? How many people are doing it now? It's everyone. So he has justified that what he did is not wrong. And he also went on to say that if I did not do what I did, falsified the accounts of the company would lose shareholder funds, would lose market reputation, could not meet analyst expectations and whatnot. People would lose their jobs, they would cancel projects and things like that. So he did it for the greater good. Well, I mean, so that justification is interesting of how fraudsters come from their perspective to understand why they did what they did. Yeah, so I think that psychology provided me that base of understanding human behavior.
Very interesting. I going back to that triangle. So the first was what opportunity is it? So meaning that when there's a lack of oversight,
lack of
controls, governance in the company, they have an opportunity to commit fraud. The second one was pressure. Tell us a bit about.
No, pressure could come from either the individual pressure, meaning you need more money, or either spouse loses their job, and then you need to provide for family. And what we are seeing also a trend of organizational pressure, right? That's interesting because there are cases where KPIs are way too high. The only way I'm going to get this done is to bribe someone, or either to defraud the amount of sales that I'm getting, for example, right? Or to falsify those numbers. So there's two ways, either bribing or either to falsify. Cheating. So that's where pressure comes in. And then comes that rationalization.
So I think this is really a good public message as well for leaders, corporate leaders, government leaders, as well as private citizens that, I mean, if you find these three things to be present, the opportunity to commit fraud or corruption, pressure on your personal life, you need money, it's tough economic times, bills to pay, and number three, you found some rationalization to justify what you're doing. These three things are the danger zone. And so if you find yourself with these three things, you need to be mindful of the temptation that is there. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, you can put in your controls. You can relook at how you put in KPIs and whatever not. So you defend yourself from opportunity and pressure. But rationalization is always going to be an issue, right? That comes with company culture. That comes with how you treat your staff. That comes with different aspects of humanity in that sense, right? So it's the human level of how you go down to things, and so that they don't justify actions that are negative. So I think that's something that's important.
No, I think that point about company culture is really important. I mean, a culture that, for example, values integrity, honesty above performance. I mean, that's really important. Now, we're going to take a short break, all right? So thank you, Raymond. Really interesting things you're sharing. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about, your own journey as a leader, but also lessons that you can pass on to future graduates and students. So we'll be right back after these messages. So welcome back, everybody. We are interviewing Raymon Ram, one of our distinguished alumni from Help University, who is the president of Transparency International Malaysia. And Raymond, we've had a really interesting discussion so far, a lot that we can learn about fraud, corruption, and how we can learn about the danger signs, action companies can take. So thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. Now, one of the things Help University is trying to do is to, in a sense, develop and educate graduates that are more all-rounded and graduates who don't just have abilities but also have integrity of character. So one of the initiatives we've introduced over the last few years is something called the 8 Help Graduate Attributes. And these 8 attributes have been integrated into all of our programs. So whether you're studying IT or business or psychology or communication or education, or law, it's part of that. And you've got a list here in front of you. And speaking as a former alumni of HELP, I'm just wondering whether, do you feel that this is an important thing? Are we as a university moving in the right direction when you look at these 8 graduate attributes? As a boss, as a president of Transparency International, do you think these 8 things are important for graduates to focus on?
I think definitely it is, because you talk about digital agility, things. The way technology is developing and how fast-paced it is. Social intelligence is going to be something very, very important going forward. That's for sure. Strategic communication, I think I brought that up earlier as well, and how we got to bring people together and communicate your message right. Mental agility. You got to continuously learn.
That's the critical thinking skills you were talking
critical
about
thinking
earlier.
skills, and you got to continuously learn. It's never going to stop, right? Environmental, global literacy, of course. Moral courage is something definitely that I would support and of course pursue as well, because again, we're coming from a civil society organization that I lead, you need that moral courage, right? And then you talk about resilience and wellness. That's something that you definitely have to keep in mind. And clarity of purpose, right? Why you're doing what you're doing, right? That's important, because if you do not have passion in what you're doing or purpose, it would be pointless, or you would burn out at some point, right, doing it. But if I could maybe choose a few that's important, right? So I think mental agility is one. Definitely that needs to be focused on, because effective learning skills, it will never stop. Right? You got to continuously open horizon, think about what is evolving, what's happening, and know that things can be different tomorrow, right? Now, if you talk about moral courage, that's something that's also very important, because we got to voice out our concerns, right? And if I can bring out one example, if you don't mind.
Sure.
This is on whistleblowing, right? Raising concerns. Okay, this is what I did quite recently, because I did a program on whistleblowing, right? And we had a group of practitioners in a room, and these were integrity officers and whatnot, and they wanted to understand how to develop a successful or a robust whistleblowing mechanism. But what I did was this: before we started, I asked them all to do this. Put yourselves in the shoes of a small business owner. Would you hire an ex-whistleblower? The response was just quiet.
Interesting.
Yeah. So now we have a group of people in a room which are there to learn how to encourage people to whistleblow, develop a successful or robust system, but they are unable to answer the question whether would they hire an ex-known whistleblower.
Okay.
Right? So the culture of them viewing whistleblowing itself is not right. Right? So again, they need to understand, they need to have that moral courage to speak up and encourage their own people to speak up within the organization before developing any system. Right? So I think moral courage is something very important, right? If not, nothing would surface and investigations and whatnot would not be done. But this is one example that really opened my eyes to understand what the culture is like and whatnot. Right? And then resilience and wellness, of course, is something very important as well. And lastly, something that has driven me all this while is clarity of purpose. Right? Knowing why I'm doing what I'm doing. Right? If not, I wouldn't be doing it.
I mean, it's interesting you mentioned, and thank you so much for your feedback and comments. I mean, we took about a year to develop this, Raymond, and we talked to thousands of alumni and industry leaders and CEOs, and really to survey and get a sense of what are they looking for in graduates. What are the kind of people that bosses want to hire? And that was the whole thinking behind this. And I remember after we went through many different versions, and eventually we came to these 8, and then we did a final survey. So we actually did a survey among, I think, about 1,000 of our alumni members, and we got them to rate from 1 to 10. And what was really interesting was the one that had the highest rating was moral courage. And that surprised me, because I was thinking, okay, maybe it's more the digital stuff or communication skills and, the usual stuff. But that was really interesting. And when we did a focus group discussion, the reason why many of these CEOs said moral courage was, to them, it was simple, which is it's an integrity issue,
Yes.
you know, which is I'm not going to hire somebody for a job if I don't trust them.
Yep.
You know, if I can't trust them with 5 ringgit or 100
Yep.
ringgit or $1 million, I mean, how can we work in the same environment?
Yep.
And so to them, that was number one. You know, is this a trustworthy person? You know, that is going to be honest and tell the truth. And like you say, even to the extent of whistleblowing, because if the organization is doing something not right, and sometimes the board may not know, the CEO themselves may not know,
Yes.
you know, but having the courage to put up their hand and speak out, I think that's really important.
Yes.
And that takes me to your work in Transparency International, which is congratulations again, Raymond, for being elected
Thank you.
President of Transparency International Malaysia. Can you tell us a bit about what Transparency International does? What is your mission?
Yeah.
You know, what is the work that you do, you know, here in Malaysia?
I mean, TI, or Transparency International Malaysia, or TI Malaysia for short, we are a civil society organization, and again, we are national chapter in Malaysia, but our secretariat is based in Berlin. So we have a network of international chapters, right, around the world.
How many chapters do you have worldwide?
I think there's 100 odd
Oh,
chapters,
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, around the world. So with those chapters, we have that international presence, right? And what we work towards is, of course, having a corrupt-free nation, looking at having a corrupt-free nation. But it comes with, again, many different areas of institutional reform that we push towards, putting up awareness programs, and being somewhat the voice of the people when it comes to governance, good governance, when it comes to anti-corruption issues and whatnot. So that's a bit of what we do at TI Malaysia. I mean, of course, we focus on advocacy, like I said, institutional reform, awareness programs, and yeah, we have publications as well to help both the government sector and also the private sector to institute proper preventive measures and whatnot to push things forward. Yeah.
Really, really, I think important work you're doing, and we are so proud of the fact that you've
Thank you.
been elected president yourself. So maybe for the benefit of the public, you know, Malaysian citizens, you know, health students, what is the role the public can play to support Transparency International, and what role can we play to move our country towards a corrupt-free nation?
Again, it's the mindset, and again, we have, I mean, I'm going to quote to say that, I mean, we have an imperfect world, but we only have this one world to stay in, right? So at the end of the day, it's that ability. Number one is the courage to speak out, right? That's number one. Number two is I mean, volunteerism is not easy, right? You would need to put in effort, you need to take your time off, and you need to support us in our efforts that we're pushing through, because it's for the greater good. When it comes to things like corruption or fraud or money laundering and whatnot, it's not things that you see the impact right away, right? So we're talking about something that would affect not just our generation, but future generations as well, and the national economy as a whole. So we got to think of that, and we have to put our time towards supporting initiatives of such, and of course, voicing out concerns when you do have concerns, and not keeping quiet, not thinking to ourselves that things are just imperfect and it would remain that way. We can make a change, but the only way we can make a change is together, right? There's no way that we can make a change individually. And what I'm trying to do here today is also empower the youth, right? The youth plays a very important role. And the youth also has digital or technologies in hand, and they can use them much better than the others, right? How can you use them in a manner that would also bring us towards the right direction? So I think those are some areas that I believe that citizens can participate and be part of.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and you know, all the best, Raymond, in your
Thank
work
you.
as president of TIM Malaysia. As you've mentioned, this is something all of us have a stake in, right? A corrupt-free country means, you know, all of us, you know, have a fairer share of the wealth, of the blessings of the nation.
Yes.
You know, we all benefit from a more transparent and corrupt-free nation. You know, I think, you know, I don't remember the figures, but they talk about the fact that, I mean, countries lose hundreds of billions of dollars every year from corrupt practices and fraud, you know.
Yes.
So I think, as you mentioned earlier, as citizens, we need to realize that this is something that affects all of us, directly or indirectly. So again, congratulations in this role, and we wish you all the best, Now, I'm going to end the interview with a survey that we designed actually in our psychology department, which is designed to help the viewers get to know you a little bit better, and to expose your vulnerabilities, as a person, all right? So with that in mind, Raymond, are you ready for the help personhood test?
Yeah, I guess so.
Ready or not, all right? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to go through a series of questions. Just clear your mind, all right?
Wow.
Answer honestly and be prepared to be seen, my friend, all right? So, let's start off with this. What's your favorite dessert?
Favorite dessert? I don't really eat desserts, but to be honest.
No dessert? How healthy are you, man?
Oh, okay, probably a pie, maybe, yeah. Yep.
Football or badminton?
Football.
Apples or oranges?
Apples, yeah.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs. Straight up.
Nasi lemak or roti canai?
Nasi lemak.
What sound makes you happy?
What sound makes me happy? Depends on the state of mind at that time.
So right now, what sound would you love to hear?
I mean, again, it depends. Probably music, probably. I don't know.
Nice.
Depends.
Good answer. Good answer, Raymond.
Yeah.
What sound makes you sad?
Sound that makes me sad? Sound of someone crying, probably.
Good answer.
Sense, yeah.
If you could have coffee with anyone in the world, who would it be with?
I know it's going to sound controversial, but Elon Musk.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be quite an interesting coffee discussion, all right? Okay. What do you do to de-stress?
What I do to de-stress? It might sound like I'm making it up, but I like to watch documentaries on crime. Right? I don't know why, but it just fascinates me of the new things that are happening there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. What is one goal that you set for your personal life for this year, 2025?
For my personal life, for 2025.
Yes.
For me, it's as long as I achieve the short milestones that I have, that's fine. So if you ask me, I've achieved what I need to so far, but before end of the year, there are certain projects in mind at TI that I would want to be finished beforehand.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Okay. Describe your perfect holiday.
Perfect holiday? Just by the beach, just nothing by the beach. Yeah, for me, if there's a beach, it's a good holiday. I just want to go anywhere else. Yeah.
So you're an ocean person,
yes.
Huh? Good stuff.
Definitely.
Good stuff. Well, you're in the right country for that. What does it mean, in your opinion, to achieve significance in our lives?
Achieve significance is to leave behind a legacy, leave behind something that would benefit the future generation. And for me, again, I've thought about this quite a bit, and it's not creating a change, not creating a big change. Even a small dent is enough, but as long as you make a change and leave the legacy behind.
I'm sure you're doing that already, Raymond. And last question, how do you want people to remember you?
How do I want people to remember me? Again, for that person that did something that benefited others, right? Not just for himself, but did something that benefited others, and their future generations will they be able to see the fruits of that going forward? Yeah.
So thank you so much, Raymond, again, for being part of this podcast and being honest and so transparent with us. Again, I just want to end by congratulating you, Raymond. Not just on your success in your career and your business, but also for demonstrating the moral courage that we want to develop in our graduates. I think you are an exemplary example of the ideal that Help University wants to create, as you've mentioned. Not just a successful person, but a person with integrity who is courageous enough to put your hand up, and be part of a really important work, even though it's thankless sometimes, it's challenging, it's difficult. But having the courage to sort of go against the tide, in order to build a corrupt-free Malaysia. So congratulations, Raymond. We're so proud of you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for taking time to be with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.